Homeless people race to move out of Longview, Washington encampment after city declares a public health emergency. So where are they racing to? They're racing right next door to the city-sanctioned homeless encampment parking lot. So they're literally moving to the site adjacent. So they're going to sweep them out, clean it up, move next door, give them a 12 by 12 spot, call it all good. Should be utopia, right? That's what we're talking about right here on News for Reasonable People. Let's jump on into it. Let's get into it and see what we've got. See what the dealio is. Homeless people race to move out of Longview encampment. They're racing, literally. City of Longview says it does not consider homelessness a crime. So they're letting campers move to an adjacent city-owned parking lot. One of the reasons I'm covering this story is that we are hearing more and more about the homelessness issue spreading from Portland to nearby communities. Longview, Washington is located in Southwest Washington. It's along the I-5 corridor. I have spent a ton of time there. My dad grew up there. My grandma was there until the last couple of years of her life. My grandfather was a medical doctor in Longview, Washington. Ton of time there. My grandma was in a nursing home towards the end of her life, and one of the nursing homes was about a mile away from this encampment. And so I used to wheel my grandma down to get her out of the nursing home. She was all there mentally, physically. Yeah, she was falling apart. That's what happens when you're like 90-something. So I would wheel her down in her wheelchair out of the nursing home, a quarter mile down to a 76 gas station. Now, it took me a while to figure out what was going on with this gas station. Well, this homeless encampment wasn't that far away, and folks would go there because it's kind of this industrial commercial mix. Longview, Washington's an old mill town. It's on the Columbia River, and it's got some rough areas. This was one of them. And so, I'm looking around in the mini mart with my grandma. She's in a wheelchair and, just trying to make all these moves and stuff happen. Just some crazy people coming in. It's one of my initial trips down there. And then I look behind the counter. I'm like, you got a nice array of crack pipes. And then I realized, these are folks coming in that are all, whacked out on meth or whatever. This was pre-crazy drugs is what I call it. Your normal meth, your normal whatever, heroin, didn't have all of the, blues, the M30s and the fentanyl and all that stuff yet. It was coming, but it wasn't there quite yet. And so I kind of got to know this area way better than I normally would. And now you've got, just homelessness being overrunning a city. So we start off with this story. Homeless camp in Longview draws complaints as residents demand action from the city. 150 people lived in the corner intersection of a couple of pretty major busy streets. 150 people. It's a big encampment. And so then enough complaints happen and the city of Longview goes, we got to do something. So their solution is, we got to clear all this out. You guys literally move next door. Does that make any sense whatsoever? No, it doesn't to me either. It's like, what? Okay. So you did something. This is kind of one of those things where the city did something, but what really happened here? Yeah, not much. The homeless residents of a large campsite in Longview, Washington raced to clear out their belongings and animals Monday morning. It was 11 a.m. and they were hastening to complete the move after the city declared the camp, located off Alabama Street, the source of a public health emergency. Got so bad, they call it a public health emergency. Now, people want to say, the poor, they're just down on their luck. We're not talking about the poor down on their luck. We are talking about bunch of them criminals, drug addicts, mentally ill, combination of all three, maybe one, take your pick. Out of those three factors, guaranteed, almost 100% of the folks in these homeless encampments fit one or two or three of those descriptions. So we're not talking about the poor and downtrodden who will inherit the earth, right? We are talking about people making lifestyle choices here, and they're choosing to live in these encampments until they get pushed out by the city because the city's like, oh, I guess we got to do something. This is what we're going to do. And then you've got stories like this. Oh, now they've got to get out. Well, it's been years. This homeless encampment has been there for years. And people have been pissed off that whole time. And there's story after story after story of people complaining. City leadership, well, we don't really consider it a crime. Therefore, let's just push them next door. And that's literally what you've got going on here. The city says it does not consider homelessness a crime, so officials facilitated a way for the campers to move on to an adjacent city-owned parking lot where they must keep each other tents within a 12 by 12 foot square marked with spray paint. All right. Don't cross over the line. You know, you play that game in the back seat with your brother. And if he crosses the line, you just hammer on him. Yeah. I mean, that's what we did. I don't know about you. We grew up in the 70s, kind of anything went. And, parents, yeah. Right? Okay. So, well, so they've got 12 by 12 spots. So you guys got to stay in this is a homeless encampment. Not exactly rule followers, right? These are people that have dropped out of society and they're living for free because our taxpayers' dollars are paying for all of their services. So yeah, there's that. Well, it's crunch time for everybody, said JD, who's been living in the Alabama street camp. The city just told them to remove their tent sites or else they'd be given trespassing warnings. Now, you're trespassing on a site that you've been living at for years. Okay. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's the only, city's a paper tiger, right? They got nothing. Clearly they've got nothing, but they get to this point where citizens get so pissed off. I mean, at what point in time are you going to have people start to do vigilante homeless encampment clearouts on their own? When is that going to happen? It wouldn't take much. You can clear these encampments out. I mean, people are living illegally anyway. Clear them out, and then somebody else figures out, all right, here's the formula. You bring a backhoe in, you bring a dump truck in, you bring some dumpsters in. All right, who's going to fund this? And you just do it. Now, granted, that's, probably violation of many, many laws. But how long is it going to take until you start to see some of that? People are fed up. They are wildly fed up with this kind of impact. And I'm going to do a live stream later this week. Probably by the time this comes out, it'll be somewhere around that time. And it's a story in the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail, they tend to, they really go in on the hard details. And they stretch things a little bit, in my opinion. Good content, but things are stretched a little bit. And one of the articles that I'm going to be reading in the live stream coming up is how people's homes in Portland, they are, selling them left, right, and center. And I've talked about that a little bit, but you're seeing more and more examples of people wanting to get away from the homeless encampment, the impact on real estate. And now you've got a city that's like, oh, I guess we got to do something here. Let's move them next door. That's the best they can come up with. Not get people in to treatment, not get people into a roof over their head, sweep them next door. That's literally the solution here. So the city had just told them to remove their tent sites or else to be given trespassing warnings. I was pissed. I mean, I don't want to be here, but things are the way they are. Well, no, they're not. They're the way things you have let them go in your life, and these are the consequences. That's the way I see it. Tough love. Hey, you need to get up off your ass and do something, whether that's go to treatment, get a job, whatever. You need to figure out a better way to live, because shooting up drugs and, dying on the sidewalk or dying in a homeless encampment area, that's not compassionate of me to allow you to do that. As a tax-paying citizen, I don't want to see you in that spot. And yet city leadership in so many of these towns, well, we don't really want to rock the boat here, so we'll just kind of let them go. And yeah, it's just crazy. So JD rented out a storage unit and had until the end of the day to move his things. Deadline is either get your stuff out or it's going to get scooped up by a dozer, he said, while trying to move his 5 dogs. You know what happens at this point? We get to that point where everybody gets really indignant. Well, they shouldn't be pushed out. They should have never been allowed to set up there in the first place. That's how this works. You can't just allow people to live just willy-nilly wherever. We are experiencing firsthand what that looks like on broad scale after the pandemic. Things were building and building and building, but when the pandemic hit and the CDC said don't sweep encampments, that's when things really proliferated, right? They really exploded in kind of scope, and also people living in the encampments became really emboldened because they weren't being swept out. So they brought in furniture, all these structures. They built double-decker buses, RVs. Remember, I was podcasting on that. It's like, what in the world are we doing? Well, homeless are doing whatever they want because there are no real repercussions until it gets bad enough and citizens scream long enough, and they're the ones footing the bill for all this, right? So how does all that work? They want us to move out of where we were in this temporary place so they can clean out because it is a public safety issue. It's a health hazard. It's a health hazard. If you haven't been, and I sat in on a premiere this morning, and somebody was saying, hey, yeah, the poor, sometimes they just need a word of encouragement. The folks living in the homeless encampments on a long-term basis, they're not the ones looking for help. And you know how we know that? You offer them services, you offer them shelter, they don't take it. They don't want to live in those circumstances. So what are you supposed to do? Yeah, you've got areas like this where there's just crime and who knows what coming out of it. She finished moving her tent in the new lot early Monday morning. I was frustrated because tents don't travel well. They aren't supposed to be lived in anyways. They take a lot of wear and tear. Tents don't travel well. They are actually the one form of housing that does travel well. Mountaineering. What do you take to the top of the world's highest mountains? High camp. What do you take up there? You take an RV? No. Do you take a travel trailer? No. You take an effing tent, don't you? So actually, tents do travel well. If you break it down, I broke a tent down this last weekend, put it back up so one of my kids could borrow it again. Yeah, I snapped one of the fiberglass poles. So annoying. It's when you get to that point where you're like, all right, that was a $90 tent. I need to get the $200 tent from REI because, yeah, it's super expensive, but they just last so much longer. I've got a quarter dome tent from REI that I've probably had for 20-something years. It's still amazing. Tents do travel well. You get a good quality one, it's fine. So they aren't supposed to be lived in anyways. This is what the homeless person is saying about tents. That is correct. They are a temporary roof over your head, meant to keep you out from the elements for a short period of time, not meant to be lived in, also not meant to be cooked in, meaning shouldn't have flames. Man, I saw, where was the encampment that had the massive fire in it? Was it somewhere down in LA? I mean, it just torched no, it was in Seattle. It was in Seattle. I think that was over the weekend. Torched an entire, I don't know how big of a space was it, but it just, poof, all those nylon tents and all the garbage and propane tanks, they just go up in flames. Yeah. And people want to say, well, just let them live there. No, you got to clean them out. And the fact that the city of Longview is cleaning this one out tells you how bad it probably got. The city said that it's cleaning the previous campsite for health and safety reasons. You got needles on the ground. Yeah. You got human feces on the ground. Yeah. You got urine all over. Yeah. You've got stories of people being assaulted, women being sexually assaulted. Yeah, you do. Anytime you get an encampment of 150 people, something that size, the stories are going to come out of it. And so the city's like, I guess we do something. Let's clear it out. You had to get enrolled in programming, meaning that you have community services and stuff, and they have to know who you are, and they're counting us, Julie said. She believes it's just a matter of time before the new site becomes as dirty and overcrowded as the last one. No, they gave you a 12 by 12 spot. You're just going to stay in your lane and be there, right, with your tent? No, that's not how this works, is it? Nothing has changed. It's already starting to become a shit show. That's a direct quote. All right. These things were never anything but a shit show. Anybody who wants to convince you otherwise is just not dealing with reality. Just not. How many stories have I covered right here on News for Reasonable People where crazy stuff has happened out of a homeless encampment? Homeless encampments next to schools. Homeless encampments on walking strips to get little kids to school. You know, you got all this just crazy stuff. And people want to say, well, we're just down on our luck temporarily. And, you know, we just need a little help. Well, you get offered help all the time and you don't take it. So what's up with that? Yeah. Nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about that. So the solution here is housing first, meaning we got to build a crap ton of houses, little mini houses. We get all these houses up, homeless situation covered, done, over. No. Why not? Well, because these people won't take a shelter referral. They just don't. They want to keep living where they're living, doing their thing. They don't want to live under rules. They don't want to have a curfew. They don't want to have to get a job. They don't want to have to be sober. They don't want to have to not sell illegal stolen goods or buy it or buy drugs, any of those things. So I'm camping up here till the end of it, added Charles, who was also experiencing homelessness. The people that are homeless here have to go somewhere, said Curtis Jackson. He moved into the camp almost 2 months ago. Everyone here is on drugs. This is a direct quote. Every single person in there is on drugs. So what can you do about that? Mandatory treatment or jail? Those are your options. Which one would you like? Take your pick. Yeah. Well, that's kind of severe. That's kind of hardcore. Well, we're at that spot where this is where it needs to happen. But you know, state of Washington, you got these liberal leaders and they love everybody to the point where people are killing themselves in environments that are not, you know, even worthy of like a third world country. And you are literally dealing with District 9, right? It's that fictional movie. It was just a total slum with the robots and yeah. It's just sad. All I can say is sad, said Vern Gilbert, who has lived in Longview for 15 years and watched the camp grow. We've been talking about this issue for 20 years. And here we are in 2022, and somebody hasn't stepped up to do more to take care of the problem. 100% agreed. At what point in time do you have people, individual citizens, step up and start to take care of the problem? Oh, then that's going to become the problem, isn't it? Then city leadership will step in and go, you can't do that. You can't do that. Many like Gilbert believe that moving the homeless into a new temporary site isn't the answer. Yeah, I'd be behind that one too. It's going to stop the violence for a little bit. Oh, we've got violence in there. What? Oh, I thought it was just a little bit messy. It's going to get some things orderly, but what are they going to do with us after that? Yeah, that's why this is just it's a temporary fix, right? It's a temporary solution to a problem that needs a much grander scale solution. Treatment, detox, jail, or move along somewhere else. Unfortunately, the move along somewhere else means somebody else just inherits this problem. So, you know, until everybody kind of bands together and makes this an issue that, you know, can't be as easily done as we've made it. I mean, Seattle, I mean, they take care of the homeless like there's no tomorrow. I mean, tax-paying citizens, you don't even get the same benefits. I mean, you're paying for all this. You're literally paying for all this. During this cleanup, the city said it will try and prevent the homeless from dispersing throughout the community. As to how they'll do that, KGW asked the city for comment, but had not heard back by the time of this story's publishing. That's just not shocking at all, is it? All right, so here's a little bit of the backstory to that homeless encampment. What led up to that encampment getting to this crisis point where you've got a public safety, emergency? Dozens of homeless campers filed in and out of a crowded campsite on the corner of Alabama Street and Oregon Way in Longview Thursday morning. "This is where I sleep," a woman named Julie said as she pointed to the inside of her tent. "Yeah, not for long. This is where I keep my knickknacks, and my dog has a bed in the corner." She's one of the roughly 150 people living in the campsite. The city is on city-owned property and has been there for years. Several years ago, the city allowed those who were experiencing homelessness to camp on the land as an emergency temporary response to the city's homeless crisis. So this is already a temporary response And now we're reacting to a temporary long-term response with another temporary response. We never do anything to actually solve the problem. Signs outside the camp said it was read it was meant to be closed in March of 2020. 2 and something years later, still working on it in public emergency. It's been nothing but heartache, said Matt Freerant, who runs Matt's Custom Meats. Matt's Custom Meats is about 900 feet from the camp. It's lawless. There are no rules and regulations. They come and go as they want between the drug use, the public masturbation, the fornication, the being solicited for sex, not only by employees, but also by our customers. So yeah, what we're saying here is this is not a good location for Matt's Custom Meats. But what does the guy do about it? He's probably been in business there for years and years and years. Freerant said he's been dealing with the problem from the campers for years and it's frustrated by the lack of response from the city. He took his concerns to the city's council meeting, which got heated. I spoke out. I told the truth. And apparently it wasn't what the Longview City Council wanted to hear. It never is, because then they'd be forced to actually come up with a response. And any kind of response to this, that's not going to be good, because then you'd actually have to do something. And city leadership doesn't want to do that, because then the onus is going to be on them. Hey, you're sweeping everybody out. Bruce Harrell here in the city of Seattle, he's done some sweeping. He's done some sweeping with the big broom. He's done a lot of sweeps, and it's made a difference, and it's made a change. Now you might say, hey, you know what? You're just scooting people around. Okay. But for the areas of town that are most prevalent and were the worst, he's kind of cleaning up some of that, making it known, hey, can't live like this here. You know what? We're going to clean this up. We're going to clean our parks up. So at least citizens, their kids, their pets don't have to play dodge the human fecal matter on the seesaw. They don't have to pick up, hypodermic needles as their kids trying to play on the swing set. Yeah, because that seems reasonable, doesn't it? Is that pretty reasonable? I think it is. All right. So the backdrop on this is like most homeless encampments. It's been there for a long time. Nearly 200 people from the community showed up to support the business, Matt's Meats, Custom Meats. And it got to the point where the city just basically had to step in and say, all right, we got to do something. We're moving you. Literally just right over there. You've all got a spot staked out, 12 by 12. It's got to be a big, big city lot, because if you had 150 people, how many tents do you have? You got 60, 70, 80, 100, something like that, probably. You got 100 12 by 12 spots. That's a big lot. And if you do any kind of camping at all, I camp in festival settings, or at least I used to. I haven't been to a festival for a while. But, they give you a little spot, and it's bigger than 12 by 12, but you don't need a ton. But you start lining up 150 people, and they're all on drugs. Tell me that's going to end well. It's just going to be the exact same damn thing as it was in the old spot. They'll just cleaned it up. So permanent solution? No. A solution? Yes. Very short term. Effective? No. But, the city leadership is going to say, hey, we cleaned it up. What more do you want us to do? How about treatment, jail? Take your pick. Yeah. And people are going to say, too hardcore. That's never been proven. Studies say you got to do something. What's it going to be? Oh, we need housing for everybody. Well, they don't go there. They choose not to go there. So what do you want to do? Yeah, there's a lot of cities around that don't have these issues. And why is that? Well, hey, can we get you into treatment? If not, you can't stay here. We're going to arrest you. You'll be put in jail. Those are your two options. And local law enforcement handles that way. There's a lot of cities around Seattle that handle it that way. Guess what? They don't have the homelessness issue that Seattle does, that Portland does, that LA does, that San Francisco does. Because they actually care about people. Law enforcement in those communities want to get them the help that they need, that their bodies are craving because they're literally dying on the streets. Hey, you need to get into treatment. Well, yeah, don't think so. And for people that are, whacked out, whether they're whacked out on drugs or they've just got mental issues, those people aren't in a right mind to be able to say, you know what? I've been thinking about this for a while. I think today is the day that I enter into treatment. They don't have the ability to do that. That's why you see so many interventions. And oftentimes the only people that get into treatment and make it through are people with extensive families because it takes a lot of folks to kind of team effort getting somebody into treatment that's on this fentanyl stuff, that's on heroin, that's on whatever. It's a hard uphill battle. So this is what's going on in Longview. I wish I could say for my dad's old hometown that this is not what's going on, but it is. And Vancouver, which is just across the river from Portland, hearing the exact same thing. It's spilling over into our downtown. It's spilling over into our community because communities like Portland and Longview and Seattle up until recently just haven't been doing anything. And this stuff just explodes on its own. You give, somebody an inch, they'll take that mile. Hey, it's like the beginning of the pandemic. We can move couches into our encampment. And so they did. And they just ended up with these massive, massive structures and, dozens of pieces of large furniture in what was meant to be a temporary solution to the homeless encampment problem. And then all those had to be cleared out at the end of the pandemic, which is what we're dealing with now. We're literally dealing with that now. So crazy stuff, right? So even Southwest Washington is not exempt from this kind of stuff. It's happening in a lot of towns. It kind of depends on what city leadership's position is on it and how they're going to handle it. Yeah, Longview, it's stuck with some issues. All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. We'll catch up soon on the next one. Bye for now.